My name is Dan Horgan, Senior Director of Corporate Engagement with Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership. Thank you all so much for joining us for today's session, The Power of Relationships, Mentoring Youth for Workforce Success. Today's webinar is presented in partnership with America's Promise Alliance and the Center for Promise, with support provided by the Schultz Family Foundation. Before we get started, I just want to cover a couple logistics. One is just to let everybody know who's participating today that we do mute all of our participants just to maintain the best sound quality throughout the course of the webinar, as well as for the recording. If you have any questions at all or want to engage with any of the presenters throughout today's webinar, we really encourage you to use the chat box or the question feature located on the right side of the screen. We will be recording today's session and making both that recording and the slides available to all of those who registered for today's session. And again, I just want to put a big shout out and thanks to our speakers who took the time to be with us today. And with that, I'm just going to give a quick overview of who you're going to be hearing from throughout the course of the webinar. We have Dudney Silla, the Program Manager for Mentor. We have Claude Green, who's the Senior Project Manager from Mentoring Works Washington and a Loaned Executive from Costco. We have Brittany Moore, the Manager of Alliance Engagement for the America's Promise Alliance, and Dr. Shannon Varga, the Postdoctoral Research Fellow for the Center for Promise. We'll give everybody an opportunity to do some formal introductions as we transition into their respective sections throughout today's webinar. But before we get started, if you are new to Mentor, we usually take some time in the beginning of each of these sessions just to give a quick overview of who Mentor is and the work that we do. So just a little background, for over 25 years now, Mentor has been in business to really serve communities across the country in raising awareness, developing and delivering resources, and promoting the quality and quantity of mentoring through all of our different tools, research, as well as our programming and partnerships across the country. We do this really leveraging multiple relationships across all different sectors, from education to business to community-based organizations. We have a network of over 24 mentoring affiliates and over 5,000 mentoring programs across the 50 states that we work with. As I mentioned, this national program network, we work with lots of different organizations that are focused in lots of different ways around mentoring, everything from the traditional mentoring model of like a Big Brothers Big Sisters, to school-based mentoring programs like City Year, to virtual mentoring programs like iMentor or Strive for College. But you can see just a sampling on the screen now of the various programs that we partner with and try to support and learn from as we advance this mentoring work. As I mentioned, we have a network across the country of about 24 mentoring affiliates, with several getting ready to launch within the next 12 to 18 months. And so this map just gives you a little bit of an indication of where we have affiliates touching down across the country. If you're interested in connecting with a local mentoring affiliate, we encourage you to check out our website at mentoring.org, and you can find the contact information for the leadership of each of those affiliates across the country. In addition to our community-based partners and work in mentoring programs, we also have a number of public-private partnerships that are really invaluable to helping us achieve our mission at Mentor of increasing the quantity and quality of mentoring across the country. And so what you see on the screen again is just a sampling of some of those companies and philanthropic partnerships that we work with in a variety of ways, everything from cause marketing campaigns to help drive increased awareness around the need for mentoring, to corporations that run in-house their own mentoring initiatives, and we provide them with training and technical assistance and work with them from a strategy standpoint to ensure that they're following what we call the elements of effective mentoring practice. So the big question, why do we run this Impact webinar series? So over the last 2 years, we've launched at our National Mentoring Summit something called the Philanthropic Partnerships Track. And that was bringing together corporations, foundations, and individual donors who have an invested interest in really helping us to close the mentoring gap in the country. And as a result of the National Mentoring Summit and their participation, they said we want to be able to keep the conversation going, and as well as be able to continually highlight effective practices, partnerships, or programs in the mentoring field. And so we created about a year ago the this Impact Mentoring webinar series. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we all are working to achieve this bigger vision of closing that mentoring gap. The fact is that 1 in 3 young people are growing up in America today without a mentor. And we believe really, really strongly that young people don't just need one person in their life to serve as a caring adult or as a mentor, but they need lots of mentoring support to put them on the path to success, whether that's success in academics, on their career pathway, or in life in general. We know from our research, especially a research report that we recently published called The Mentoring Effect, that mentoring works. And so what you see on the screen here is some of the statistics that came from this particular study, which asked young people themselves what impact mentoring had on them. And you'll see some of the statistics such as, 55% were more likely to be enrolled in college. They began to see themselves in college, see that as a viable opportunity for themselves. We also saw 130% more than twice as likely to say that they held a leadership position in a club or a sports program, so they were getting more engaged within their school or within their broader community. And my favorite statistic from this particular research report is that 90% of the respondents who had a mentor said that they are now interested in becoming a mentor themselves. So what we see is, this sort of rippling effect that if they have this web of support, they then translate that to wanting to give back to other young people within their community, which is really obviously important for all of us as we work to close that mentoring gap. So today I'm really excited. As I mentioned earlier, some of the speakers that we have in partnership with the America's Promise Alliance, the Center for Promise, Mentoring Works Washington, and Dudney, who represents Mentor, the National Mentoring Partnership. We have an exciting project that we wanted to showcase on this particular webinar called Opportunity Youth Thriving. And to give us a little bit of an overview of what this program entails and what all of the different layers of partnership look like, I'm going to turn it over to Dudney and Brittany to lead us through this first section. So Dudney and Brittany, it's all yours.
Thanks a lot, Dan. So I'm just going to give a quick project overview. I know we're catching up on the slides here, but through the Opportunity Youth Thriving initiative, we hope to aid in providing young people with a web of quality relationship support and social capital, as these are vital components in helping them successfully navigate the workplace and secure and sustain employment. For this intervention, we are conducting a series of trainings for program staff, mentors, youth, in building quality webs of support. Additional technical assistance from relationship experts will supplement, improve, and expand existing efforts around youth employment. A little bit about Project Partnership. This is a partnership, of course, as Dan mentioned earlier, between Schultz Family Foundation, America's Promise Alliance, and Mentor National, along with their local affiliates in Minneapolis and Seattle. Our goal is to work primarily with opportunity youth, which we define as young people between the ages of 16 and 24 who are not currently in school or working. We've also targeted community-based workforce development programs who serve opportunity youth. And we do have a list of our most current programs that we're going to be working with in Seattle. Those are Goodwill Seattle, Juma Ventures, Urban League, and then the programs in Minneapolis are the Brand Lab, Cristo Ray, and Tree Trust. And at this point, I will turn it over to Dudney Silla with Mentor National.
Hello, everyone. Yes, and we're really excited to be able to share with you today about the project. This initiative really will be based on an intervention that will first be offered in 2 pilot communities. Our community in Seattle and our community in Minneapolis, and then refined and solidified based on the feedback we receive from stakeholders and partners in both of those communities. The basis of this intervention will be a series of resources that can assess, supplement, improve, and expand existing efforts around youth employment with a package of on-site training and technical assistance, as well as research and additional resources that integrate the development of a web of support relationship within the lives of youth that are being served through the project. And so our goal is to work with 3 core audiences during this pilot: supervisors at workplaces, staff members with the local CBOs that we're partnering with, as well as the opportunity youth audience themselves, all to overlay a focus on positive relationship building that is strength-based and mentor-like, intentional, developmental, youth-centered, and that really helps to support youth in building their agency or relationship building skills with adults, and also encourage adults, particularly in this case, members of CBOs and supervisors, to see the role that they play in being part of a web of positive adult relationships. And through that web, to really support career success, retention, and reconnection to work for our Opportunity Youth audiences. Overall, the purpose of OIT is to be able to develop a scalable model that will ultimately help build capacity and provide resources to these communities in order to provide Opportunity Youth with the relationship skills and relationships that they need to be able to be successful at work and in life, and hopefully with the long-term income of really impacting retention and success in the workplace. In addition to the 3 trainings that we want to present to youth related to how they can identify mentors and initiate and maintain relationships, to program staff on the role that they can play in helping both youth and supervisors intentionally develop their relationships together, as well as to job site supervisors themselves on how to adopt a mentoring mindset while supporting Opportunity Youth in the workplace. And through the course of the year, to be able to provide additional technical assistance to all 3 of those audiences as we evaluate the impact of our intervention over the course of the year, all with the hope of supporting workplace success in the end for all the Opportunity Youth involved in the project. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Dudney and Brittany. So I just have a couple of quick questions for you before we transition to the next piece, which is, in the work that you're doing so far in the program with the first cohort in Seattle and in Minneapolis, from a youth perspective, Opportunity Youth perspective, what is the biggest need out there when you're thinking about this project and how it relates to supporting Opportunity Youth on their pathway to education or career?
Yeah, I can hop in on that. I think with Opportunity Youth, there are a few things that are really, really important. One being, because Opportunity Youth are, at risk or are disconnected, it is really important for them to feel and to know that they're not alone in navigating through, the challenges of reconnecting with work. And so with this project, we hope to help them to see the assets that they already have. Opportunity Youth come to the table with a set of great relationships that they have in their communities with, people that they've interacted with. And through this project, we hope to support them in understanding where their webs of support currently are, as well as adopt skill sets for how to deepen that web of support and complement that web of support through building relationships with employers in the workplace site. So we really want to both acknowledge the fact that they come to the table with a lot of assets, despite the terminology of being disconnected, while at the same time, this project will provide additional resources and additional opportunities to make sure that they have that web of support that they're going to need in order to reconnect with work and to be successful at work. And secondly, we also want to work with all the audiences to really see this as a two-way street. Opportunity Youth are going to work hard and do the best that they can to adopt the skills necessary to be employable. And we also want to work with supervisors and workspaces to really think through, how do we support Opportunity Youth? How do we also ensure that our environments, our cultures, our policies can also adapt to their needs as well? And I think through that two-way street conversation, we'll create the appropriate culture to be able to support Opportunity Youth, both in the short term and in the long term.
Excellent. Brittany, do you want to add anything, or?
No, I think Dudney summed that up perfectly.
Excellent. So Dudney, I'm going to just ask you one sort of follow-up, and Brittany certainly jump in on this one as well. And I love what you said about making sure that young people that are coming to the table as part of this program recognize all of the assets that they already bring to the table. From my experience working with Opportunity Youth, sometimes they have been told, and they've believed themselves, that they don't have a lot to offer employers. And it sounds like through this program, young people in partnership with this web of support, these mentoring relationships that we're building around them, that it's really helping those Opportunity Youth discover really the greatness that they have within themselves, the skills that they've been able to develop, and in many ways translate those life experiences to how they could best support an employer within a position that they acquire. So I'm just curious, what are some of those skills that you see within Opportunity Youth, or that you've heard about through the program partners?
Yeah, I think that's a phenomenal point and question. First off, what I want to reemphasize as well is, we really see Opportunity Youth as partners in this work. Opportunity Youth, they understand very intimately the challenges that are present in terms of why they've been disconnected. They understand their communities. They understand what their educational experiences are. The one thing that researchers or programs can't bring to them is their own experience. They know their own experience better than anyone else does. And so through this project, we really see them as not just recipients of a training and technical assistance, but we see them as experts in their own experience. And our hope through the training process itself is to really talk to them about that. How did you get through? How have you made connections over the course of your years with adults? What worked? What didn't work? These Opportunity Youth have found a lot of ways to survive and make progress and to figure things out. And we really want to learn from them what skills particularly they adapted to make connections with adults. For example, in our training with young people, we talk about web of support mapping, where they have the opportunity to sit down and reflect on the adults that they've had positive relationships with. And we hope that through a training like that, they have the opportunity to reflect on the skills that they brought to bear in developing those relationships and in developing those connections. Secondly, what we want to do is reemphasize with them that they have relationship building skills already. With the community-based organizations that we're working with, Opportunity Youth got to those programs through a myriad of ways. Sometimes they got through those programs through their current relationships, but they also used their own skill sets to find those programs because they knew that they wanted additional support. And so really we hope that the training is mutual in the sense that we can overlay some additional social resourcefulness skills to what they already do, particularly around how it's okay to state your truth. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out to supervisors and say, here are my goals. Here are my dreams. Here are what I want to do within the workspace. Would you be willing to help me achieve those goals? And so if we can bring that skill set to them in the trainings, in addition to the skills they've already used, I think that really provides us with the best opportunity to have an impact.
That's great. Thanks, Sudney. I think that actually is a really good transition to our next section. And so I'm going to bring Claude in at this point into our conversation as we think about, working with young people and helping them really discover what they have to offer employers. On the other end of the spectrum, what we have found across the country is there's a lot of programs that are helping to prepare young people to enter the workforce and to be successful in obtaining jobs. But one of the things that we really are mindful of is making sure that we're not just helping young people get jobs, but we're helping young people really retain those jobs and thrive within the workforce. And a big part of that is how we work with companies to best support them in their role as managers in the workplace for Opportunity Youth. And so, Claude, I'd love to invite you to share with us the business case for the Opportunity Youth Thriving initiative.
Sure, Dan. Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk a little bit about the business case and kind of where companies see themselves in working with Opportunity Youth. Companies understand that Opportunity Youth represent a wealth of untapped talent and may lack the necessary skills and resources required to succeed in today's competitive workplace. We're finding that entry-level roles are disappearing, and it is getting harder for Opportunity Youth to get their foot in the door. Very often, low-income Opportunity Youth of color are last in line. At the same time, there are millions of jobs going unfilled in our workplace as employers can't find the qualified people to fill those jobs. Companies face talent challenges that impact their bottom line, such as costly high turnover. When a company loses a worker, it incurs expenses to find that replacement. So for those positions that are lost. So those costs rise through advertising, recruitment, administrative costs, and hiring and training. And the total loss of productivity affects the bottom line of these companies. So companies are reevaluating their recruiting tools and relying more on community-based organizations to help build a stronger workforce through employee engagement and also through employee leadership development. Companies are participating in job fairs similar to the ones that we do here in the Washington State and the Seattle area, called the 100K Initiative to communicate job fulfillment needs. So these type of hiring events for job seekers usually are targeting young people, young opportunity youth, particularly through from the ages of 18 to 29. And we're actually starting to see a lot more of those type of hiring events taking place around the country. Companies are as well increasing focus on corporate social responsibility to protect their brands and impact social change. A company's reputation is everything. So this is a very important point that you're seeing a lot of companies focusing on. Next slide. One of the things that we focused on is workforce development mentoring, or building a strong re-engagement system. Businesses are increasing worksite mentoring of opportunity youth with coaching, networking, and career navigation to increase job retention. Some of the things they're doing is identifying, or some of the things that I'm doing with OYT is identifying local corporations interested in working with some of the local OYT partners to connect work-ready young adults to job opportunities and career pathways. We introduced worksite integrated mentoring to provide strong employer support for better work experiences and long-term outcomes, as well as establish a talent pipeline that provides a data source to specific jobs by industry, wages, education requirements, forecasting, analysis of some of the things that we do. And we build a seamless path from training providers to businesses. As far as my work and its connection to Costco, first I'll share with the audience that Costco is the largest American membership-only warehouse club. And we have been confronted with a lot of challenges just in our growth over the last 33 years with obtaining the necessary management pool we need to continue to grow our business. So what we're doing is Costco Warehouse is has a hiring program now in place in partnership with an OYT social enterprise. And what we are trying to do is demonstrate the business value of hiring opportunity used to explore Costco's culture, business practices, and potential long-term career opportunities. We'll establish relationship between Costco and Opportunity Youth Mentor partners to hire at warehouse work sites for developmental relationship building, and work-based learning experience, and bring together business education community-based organizations to build a stronger workforce.
Excellent, Claude. Just a couple, I'm going to ask you some follow-up questions as well. I'm just curious from your experience at Costco, as you see young people entering the workplace for the first time, what sets them up for success within that first 30 to 60 days of starting their job?
The most important thing is building their confidence of they belong in that space. And that is one of the things that we really are focusing on, is making that connection with new employees so that they really can ask questions, be open to asking questions. Dudley touched on it earlier, is we really want the employees to come into our work environment being themselves, being curious about what makes the business work, and how might they be able to contribute new ideas to help bring on new innovation and other things to the workplace. We don't always have all the answers, and just because a company is successful doesn't mean that they aren't still looking for new ideas. And we know that those, as particularly in the opportunity youth sector, some of those are very talented young people, and we think that we can benefit greatly from some of the things that they're bringing to the table.
Absolutely. From a manager standpoint, what do you feel like some of the biggest challenges are that managers face when working with youth that are just starting their careers, just getting into the workforce for the first time?
Some of the fundamental things are simply timeliness, professionalism. those are the basic things. Again, being a membership club and having our members pay to shop with us, it's really important that the customer service piece is emphasized, and anybody working for Costco recognizes that customer service is number one. And because those are members, everyone is special to us who shop in Costco. So that's the thing that our managers probably most emphasize. You know, Dan, one of the other things that I want to touch on, and I think a lot of you see this with a lot of companies, is in our business, Costco is looking to open 25 to 30 warehouses per year. And when you think about that, that means that for each warehouse, you know, there's a manager, there's two assistant managers. So if there's 25 to 30 new warehouses opening in a year, there's 25 to 30 new managers that we need. That's 50 to 60 new assistant managers that we're going to need. We need a management staff that's going to be 500 to 600 people. So now you're looking at a total management staff needed for these buildings that are reaching, you know, 600, 700 new positions. So now you can see that our looking to work with Opportunity Youth is more than just we want to feel like we're doing the right thing for our communities. We really also, aside from that, need to find those talented people.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I applaud what Costco is doing in terms of, you know, stepping up and being a part of this project, as well as, you know, really just want to recognize you, Claude, for the role that you're playing on behalf of Costco, but also on behalf of one of our affiliates, Mentoring Works Washington, in really helping to, you know, spearhead this initiative within the Seattle area. So thank you for all of that work as well.
Thank you.
So this is a good transition then for us to move on to our next section, which, you know, so far we've heard the overview of what Opportunity Youth Thriving is all about, really understanding the purpose of it, who all the different partners are in it. We understood from the youth perspective and from the business perspective what we're striving to achieve. But as with any project, we always need to check ourselves and figure out how exactly we are going to measure our progress and learn from the work that we do throughout the course of an initiative. And so with that, I'm going to introduce Dr. Shannon Varga from the Center for Promise, who is going to provide an overview of what the evaluation goals and sort of the theory of change is behind the work of Opportunity Youth Thriving.
Thank you so much, Dan, and thank you, Dudney, Brittany, and Claude for providing all of that great context about the project and also the corporate perspective. I'm very excited to be talking about the evaluation for this project, as this is the first intervention of its kind to my knowledge, and I was really grateful to be a part of these many different partnerships coming together to tackle this issue of relationships for Opportunity Youth. So there are several goals for the evaluation portion of the project, and they all stem from creating a learning agenda. As we've mentioned, this is a pilot project, and as I just mentioned, this is the first of its kind. And so we want to make sure that at every step of the way, we're being thoughtful and recording what worked, what didn't work, and making sure that we're always improving in the process. And so this will include not only using our and our partners' experiences, but also using the data that we collect at each site from young people and the adults on both their outcomes and their experiences in the intervention to sort of improve future evaluations as well as refine the interventions. And so now I'm going to talk through the design and the theory behind the evaluations. So traditional models of workforce readiness were developed in very high socioeconomic status samples that were very homogeneous and created a very linear idea of workforce readiness. And this idea doesn't necessarily take into account all of the contextual factors that Opportunity Youth might be facing, as Claude had sort of discussed earlier. So for this project, we're using the psychology of working theory, which takes into account the economic constraints and marginalization that disconnected or at risk for becoming disconnected youth might face. So in this model, economic constraints and marginalization seen on the left side as predictors affects youth's work volition, which is the extent to which they feel they have control over the types of jobs that they can access. And it also impacts their career adaptability or their ability to cope with work-related transitions, barriers, and traumas. And all of this leads to the central construct of the theory, which is considered decent work. Decent work describes the extent to which a person feels like they're doing fulfilling and meaningful work. And this in turn leads to the right side of the model, which are the positive outcomes that we're always looking for in life, such as meeting survival needs and well-being. Specifically for this project, Opportunity Youth Thriving, we've been very thoughtful about the developmental stage of the young people that we're working with and the nature of the programs, not all of which are currently leading to immediate employment. And so we've decided to replace decent work with vocational identity. For the young people that we're working with that are pre-employment, it's much more developmentally and conceptually appropriate to be focusing on their career and work readiness and to understand the way that their identity as a future worker is developing through the program. Additionally, we'll be looking at their work volition and career adaptability as constructs that are important as proximal outcomes to show that through these programs and the intervention, the young people have an increased sense of choice over what they can do for careers despite the constraints that they face, and that they will have more internal psychosocial resources and external resources to cope with work-related transitions, barriers, and traumas. And so these are our work-related outcomes, but you'll also see in the model under moderators, which are just factors that influence the strength between the relationship between two constructs. So a young person's proactive personality, their critical consciousness, the social support they have through supportive relationships, and their economic conditions impacts the relationship between the economic constraints that they face and sort of their work volition. And so the trainings will really be addressing the proactive personality, the critical consciousness, and the social support through supportive relationships. Next slide. So as Dudney and Brittany had discussed earlier, we are approaching relationships in this project through a webs of support perspective. And so from this perspective, we believe that in order for young people to thrive, they need a network of supportive adults who will ultimately provide them with the social capital and social support they need to navigate the workplace and school. More tenets of this theory are that youth are, and as Dudney so well put earlier, youth are active agents in developing relationships in their lives, and they bring a lot of assets to the table. We also believe that the more interconnected their webs are, the more resilient they'll be in the face of adversity and transitions. And so you can see, hopefully, how the Opportunity Youth Thriving framework will encourage a mini web of support for some of these disconnected youth by training a supervisor and a mentor in their lives as well as themselves, as well encourage them to strengthen existing relationships in their lives. And so outcomes regarding relationships, we will be assessing the strength of the current relationships that they have in their lives and the number of relationships that the youth have, as well as the perceived social support that they have, their vocational identity, and changes in attitudes towards relationships on the adult end. And so for this project, we're using a pre-post survey design. We're doing this in order to establish any change that may happen as a result of the training. So we will be measuring them at baseline prior to when they're receiving the trainings. And this will give us the initial idea of where the supervisors are on their thoughts of relationships, where the youth's initial webs of support are, how many people they have, where they are on their critical consciousness and things of that nature. And then at a later date at the end of the program, we will assess them on the exact same survey again to see if the young people have increased in the positive constructs that we want them to increase in, if they have more relationships which they report to have strong connections with, and they have more relationships in general. And as well, we're hoping on the adult end to have the adults think more positively about young people and suggest that they're sort of the organization that they're in is more supportive of youth having voice in the organization. And so we'll be using technology to sort of streamline the data collection process. We'll be collecting much of the data through Qualtrics, which is an online research surveying platform. And this way we can create the surveys and just send them out with a simple link so that youth can take them and adults can take them before and after the intervention. And we are also using a new app called the Person-Centered Network app, which was developed by researchers at UC Denver, which will allow young people to just use a tablet and input their social networks, and they'll be shown as a web, as you saw in the theory slide. It'll look something like that, and then they'll be able to draw connections between the different adults. And this will help streamline the data analysis process, which will help us feed back our findings into the process and intervention in line with our learning agenda.
Shannon, if you don't mind, I would love to ask you to share a little bit more context. I love the story that you gave us around how this app was initially created and how we're adapting it for this particular project. And I just think it's an important point to highlight around like something being developed for maybe a completely different industry or a completely different purpose, and how sometimes we can learn from those examples in the work that we're doing in the youth development space.
Absolutely. So, yeah, sorry, I wasn't sure how much time I was going to have going into this, but the Person-Centered Network app was actually created by the folks at UC Denver to for patient care providers, and they would have adults come to them and map out all of the different needs that they had. And so say if they needed to have different healthcare or mental health services, and then if the people, they would click on a need that they had. If they didn't have someone that they could go to fulfill that need, the app would then auto-populate different services in the community that that person could go to. And so in the developmental literature and in developmental research, we've been toying with this idea for about a decade of trying to map out youth social networks because it's very important. But most of the time we had been doing it by hand, where we'd have young people sit down and they would draw out with a pencil and paper the different people in their lives. And they would have to sort of narrate it through an interview, and then we would have to code the interview to talk about, you know, who they felt close to and why they felt close to this person. And it was a very long process, and ultimately, I would say not often fruitful, because it would just take so long to sort of code the data. When we found these people at UC Denver that were using this health app just for health services, we thought this is actually exactly what we need, and we just needed to have youth be able to visualize the different networks, the different adults that they have in their lives. And in addition, the app, you're able to, when you input a person, attach all these different attributes to a person. So you can attach if you feel close to them, if you trust them, if it's a positive relationship that you have with them. And so they sort of backed into this developmental arena, because there's a lot of researchers who are very interested in using this in the developmental space. And they just backed into it, not realizing that this has been a great need in our arena for a long time.
Absolutely. Thank you for giving that. I just love that, the context there and the connection between the original creation of the app and how we've evolved the app for this particular initiative. Shannon, one other question for you, and that is, when you think about, you know, the work that you're doing with community-based organizations or programs or projects like Opportunity Youth Thriving, when you layer in the evaluation element, you know, people come at evaluation from all different points of view and levels of experience. And so I'm just curious, like, in order to ensure that we're properly evaluating programs, that we're helping organizations build their capacity around really using evaluations to continually learn, what are some of the ways that you've helped sort of coach organizations thinking about evaluation for projects like this?
Well, we're very much at the beginning of this project, but some of the things that I felt have been incredibly helpful so far is, of course, I didn't realize how heavy the word evaluation was when we first stepped in, and how much weight that brings to organizations. And so I understood very early on the fear that they were having, that we were sort of maybe going to be judging them. And instead, what's been helpful is, you know, framing the conversation very honestly and clearly, that this is a partnership and that we want to work together and we want to learn together. This is a learning agenda for all of us, but also explaining to them that this isn't just helping about the young people. Of course, number one, our priority is the young people, and it's incredibly important that we help this population, but also our coming in and collecting data can help them too. And not in a judgmental way that's going to tell them that they're doing things wrong. Instead, we can take their data, and organizations everywhere are collecting a ton of data on young people, and many times maybe not tapping into it in as many ways as they can, because they just don't have the techniques to analyze it. But we can take their data and use this in such a way to lead them to improve their processes in their organization. And so this helps the programs function better. So it's not just about helping the young people, it's also about helping their organization. And it isn't a judgment on them, and just emphasizing that we're partners, and being available and suggesting that we find it important to have openness and clarity and transparency, I think has been very helpful. And so I have a lot of the programs who have felt very comfortable just directly asking me any question that they have. And I'm fully happy to answer it, and I'm always open with them. And I think that's helped a lot.
That's great. I mean, one of the other things I would just highlight with some other projects that we've been working on is just the importance of evaluation from all the different points of view. So, you know, Shannon said there's the youth perspective, there's the community-based organization perspective, but also from the employer point of view. Some companies that fully leverage evaluation work like this are able to then show that employees engaging in mentoring activities, how they're further developing or enhancing their specific skills regarding management, communications, problem solving, which all then translate to their sort of day-to-day function as well. And so just, again, sort of sometimes reframing evaluation to an opportunity to learn or creating somewhat of a learning community across sectors can help us come to the table with maybe more of an open mind around how the evaluation can help us all learn and grow and continue to move closer towards the ultimate vision that we're working towards. So I want to just be fully transparent. I'm having some technical issues on my end. Other than you guys can certainly hear me. I've been monitoring that and making sure that you all can hear me, but I'm not able to see the chat box. So behind the scenes, I want to give a big shout out to Kristen Howard from the Mentor team, who's been helping to monitor the chat box. We're going to, in a few minutes, we're going to turn, and Kristen and Dudney, I'm going to ask you if you can step in a few minutes to pose any of those questions for our speakers today. But before we do that, just a reminder that if you do have questions, to put them in the chat box so that we can make sure we get to those in a little bit. But in the meantime, I want to sort of share with you a few lessons learned as it's been shared so far in the process of today's webinar. This is a project that is still early on in its development and evolution, very much in pilot stage within our 2 cohorts in Minneapolis and Seattle. But nonetheless, there have definitely been opportunities where we have, sort of hit the pause button and reflected on lessons learned or what we're learning that could be relevant to the broader field of youth mentoring. And so we wanted to share with you just, 4 specific sort of buckets of lessons learned, if you will. And I'm certainly going to invite Dudney, Claude, Brittany, and Shannon to jump in at any point. I'll sort of frame each one and then open it up if there's additional comments. But the first one is really around project management. As you can hear from this project, there's lots of different layers to it. There's the backbone affiliate organization in each of our 2 cities. So Mentoring Works Washington and the Minnesota Mentoring Partnership. Then there's this layer of community-based organizations who are in turn working with opportunity youth and employers, supervisors that are going to be managing these young people in the workplace. And so from a project management standpoint, there's 3 things that really stand out that we feel are really relevant. One is to make sure everybody is clear on the vision of where this project is going and that there's alignment across all of those different partners, from the young people to the supervisors, all the way to the national partners with America's Promise Alliance and Mentor. The second is just the need for a detailed project plan. As we've all worked on this project, is just making sure that there's so many different moving parts that we need to make sure that there's greater transparency or clarity for everybody around where we are on the project, what's coming up in the very near short term versus where are we going longer term as we expand beyond these 2 pilot cities. And then the third really ties to that is ensuring clarity of roles and responsibilities for everyone. As you can imagine, with any cross-sector partnership, particularly when you have multiple partners in the project, it's important that everybody understands kind of who's on first for what aspects of the project and how we can best support each other as a team moving the overall project forward towards its vision. Just pause there, see if anyone else wants to comment on that bucket before I move to the next section. All right, the second key lesson that we've learned is really around partnerships. And I think the 2 things that we would highlight here, it ties to project management as well, and that's just communication has been really critical when building and managing partnerships. And I think that this project is such a great case study when you think about a lot of conversations within corporate social responsibility, within foundations, is around national to national partnerships. Then you have national to local dynamics, and then local to local dynamics in play and partnerships in play. And so again, just communication is so important at all of those different levels. And again, sort of a field application would be making sure that there's a real intentionality around the communications process. And no one is ever going to be perfect in this space. And so just always hitting the pause button as a team to say like, hey, how are we doing in communications? What can we do differently? Or what can we do better as we continue to work together and sort of get into our group, get into our routine? Going along with that is just the importance of establishing some baseline criteria for identifying partners. That's one of the key lessons that we've learned as part of the Opportunity Thriving initiative, is to make sure that we're clear on the criteria, so that as we were evaluating the project, that we're really comparing apples to apples in many ways, versus looking at such diverse programs that really have various program models that are so different, or working with very different populations, that it can become challenging to get in there and evaluate it to the best of our ability. So one thing that we've already identified as a lesson learned is the more clear we can get with our criteria for partnerships, the more effective we'll be in being able to really test our theory of change that's in play. Any comments on that one before we move to number 3? All right. The third one is just around capacity building. And this kind of plays off of the conversation that Shannon was just sharing too, which is we have to, take the time to just understand where all the partners are in terms of their experience, in terms of the strengths that they bring to the table, in terms of sometimes their limitations around staff capacity or resource constraints. And so just acknowledging and addressing the unique needs of each organization, as well as the young people. So sort of going all the way back to the beginning of today's session with the comments that Dudney was sharing, really making sure that we're not approaching this from sort of like a top-down mindset, that all of these adults in this web of support are here to like save the day for the young person, but in building really effective and respectful relationships that acknowledge all of the great things that young people bring to the table, and are really about empowering them to discover and utilize the potential that they do have and all the skills that they bring to an employer or to an education opportunity. And so by fully leveraging each other's strengths, from the youth to the CBOs to the employers, we can really maximize the overall impact of the project itself. And that's a really important part as we just build the capacity, not just of the core partners today, but as we think about the scaling of this, or thinking about the greater field application. Anyone want to jump in on that one?
Yes, this is Dudney. And one thing I would add to that is part of what we're also doing related to the trainings is we do ask for feedback at the end of the trainings from all of the audiences that we're working with. As we said before, this is a pilot where we want to learn as much as possible. And to Dan's point around leveraging strengths, we really want to incorporate their feedback, as we build this project out. And so at the end of each training, we ask folks questions around, what was helpful, what didn't quite land. Are you interested in following up with us, whether it's through a focus group or a one-on-one conversation? We really want to involve them in the process, so it's not just show up at a training and hope that they're able to apply it, but through the technical assistance and through any feedback that they give us in the training and following the training, we really hope to incorporate their voice as we build out the model moving forward. And so that part of the process is really important to us.
Absolutely. And that sort of plays off of this, the last point here around evaluation, is just ensuring alignment and clarity on how we've designed the evaluation, the tools that are being used to evaluate the work, and just how those things are being administered. If everybody's on the same page around that and comes to it with an open mind, that we all are here to learn from one another, as well as to teach one another what we already know, then we can, again, move at a more accelerated rate, and we can drive to a greater impact. When we also, and this is to Shannon's point, when we view evaluation as a learning opportunity versus a judgment, no one's coming in necessarily to critique a particular program model or critique a specific way of working, but rather to begin to dig in and learn like what really is the most effective, or what drives us closer towards the desired output or outcomes that we're all aiming to achieve. And how do we integrate those learnings? How do we take the data, take the findings, take these lessons learned, and really incorporate it into our planning, and then amplify that beyond this project team, so that others in the field can learn from the work that's happening with Opportunity Youth Thriving as well, which is ultimately our objective as part of this webinar and the overall broader webinar series, is just to always be reflective and share what we know in the hopes that it really helps other organizations, other corporations, foundations that are either already engaged in this work or are interested in engaging in it further. with that, I know we have about a little less than 10 minutes left, so I'm going to ask Dudney or Kristen if you can jump in and first share if there's any questions from participants on today's session.
Yes, so far, no questions for the audience. So, it looks like everyone is riveted and participatory. Thank you all for listening in. We currently don't have any questions.
Okay, great. So I'll ask the panelists if there's anything that you feel like we maybe have missed in providing an overview of Opportunity Youth Thriving, or any key points that you would want to make sure that we cover before we transition to wrapping up. All right, looks like no further points and no further questions. So with that, we will just transition. There's a couple of resources that we highlighted that, again, this will be available, these sets of slides will be available with the recording for today's webinar, but additional resources from Mentor that may be helpful to those tuning in. One is our online philanthropic community of practice. If you represent a corporation, a foundation, or an individual donor investing in this work, we run a community of practice where we share the latest research in the field. We encourage networking across corporations, foundations, and philanthropic partners, and really help to just put out on a regular basis the latest resources that are available to corporate mentoring programs or that foundations could leverage with their grantee network. The Mentoring Connector is a national database of mentoring opportunities across the country, which is searchable by zip code and type of mentoring program that you might be most interested in. So it's a fantastic resource. If you represent a mentoring program and you're not currently a part of the Mentoring Connector, please be sure to reach out to us and let us know so that we can share with you how to get your program listed in that national database. A few additional resources that are available. The National Mentoring Resource Center is a clearinghouse of tools, resources, and effective practices that support anyone engaging in mentoring programs. It's a great sort of set of resources and webinar recordings, tools, etc., that you can really leverage in the work that you're doing. And again, that's applicable to mentoring programs as well as those that are investing and engaging in mentoring. In addition to this Impact webinar series, which is featuring corporate and foundation-led initiatives, we also have a collaborative mentoring webinar series, which is run on a monthly basis. It's a free webinar that is really designed by practitioners for practitioners, so I encourage you to check that out as well. And then last but not least is the National Mentoring Summit. Super excited to share with you that the 2018 National Mentoring Summit registration just opened this week. It's currently scheduled for January 24th to 26th in Washington, D.C. Definitely check it out. Early bird rates are running through October 2nd. And so be sure to check out this amazing conference. I've gone for many, many years, and it includes over 1,000 practitioners, philanthropic partners, researchers, policymakers. It really is a great opportunity to both learn about the latest work in the field, as well as network with people that are investing in or engaging in youth mentoring. And then the last slide just gives everybody a heads up. Our September Impact webinar is going to be on Thursday, September 28th at 2 o'clock Eastern time. And we are going to be featuring one of our corporate partners, Genentech, and the work that they do out in the San Francisco Bay Area, specifically around STEM-based mentoring, with students starting in kindergarten and going all the way through high school graduation. It's an amazing, amazing initiative that they've been running now for several years. And so we'll have our partners, both from the local school district as well as from Genentech, sharing an overview of that program and the evolution of their partnership. So the link that's on the screen, you can use that to register for that September 28th webinar. And then you've also see on the screen all of the contact information for today's speakers. And we definitely would encourage any follow-up questions or comments based on today's session, all around the Opportunity Youth Thriving initiative. With that, I'll just check in one more time. Dudney, any questions pop in?
So far, no other questions.
Okay.
feel free to reach out to us. Obviously, like Dan said, anytime about the project. We're really excited about it, and we look forward to being able to report back as we move ahead.
Excellent. Thanks, Dudney. And a big thank you to Claude, Brittany, and Shannon as well for being our speakers today and for sharing your aspect of this particular project. Really appreciate it, and look forward to hopefully staying in touch with those participants or seeing you next month on September 28th. Thanks so much again for tuning in today, and take care.